Welcome everyone this morning. Thank you for coming. After many of us were up here till about midnight last night. And what time did you guys get done?
Oh, much earlier.
Much
than that.
earlier, yeah. Here we're here to talk this morning about the impending passage of the Minnesota Consumer Data Privacy Act. So I've been working on this myself for 5 years, since 2019. So this is will be the culmination of a significant effort. So while browsing the internet, you may have encountered statements like, if you're a resident of such and such a state, California, Virginia, Colorado, you may have these additional privacy rights. So when this bill passes, we'll join the ranks of those states with a comprehensive consumer data privacy laws, and Minnesota consumers will have those same rights as well. So the provisions of the Minnesota Consumer Data Privacy Act, which was originally House File 2309 and Senate File 2915, authored by Senator Westland, these have now been incorporated into the House Commerce Finance Bill, which was originally HF 5295. And in line with the recent trends, it has now been further consolidated into House File 4975, which was posted on the calendar for the day today. Laws like these have now been enacted in 15 other states so far. The bill would grant consumers the right to prevent their data from being sold or used to target advertising at them. In the case of sensitive personal data, including location data, and biometric data, companies would have to secure your permission before using it for either of these purposes. Otherwise, consumers would be able to opt out of using their data for these purposes, and the bill anticipates the advent of a universal opt-out mechanism built into web browsers, where you could just check a box and the web browser would send a signal to the company saying, this person never wants their data sold or used to target advertising for them. It's already built into Firefox and DuckDuckGo, and is being built into other web browsers right now. So consumers would have the right to know what data a company has about them, to obtain a copy of that data, to have any errors in that data corrected, and to have their data deleted. They would be able to opt out of having their data used to profile them using automated decision-making tools, companies also would be then required to publish in plain English a description of their privacy policies, to protect the privacy of the consumer data in their possession, to limit the collection of data to that which is necessary to provide goods or services to the customer, to retain it no longer than necessary to serve those purposes. They would have to know what data they have about the customer, name the person responsible for administering these policies, and they would be prohibited from using consumer data in a discriminatory manner. So the Minnesota bill is based on the same framework as bills that have passed in 14 other states so far. It was originally developed by a state senator in Washington, but there are a few provisions in our bill that are unique to Minnesota. So companies would be prohibited from attempting to re-identify data that has been collected in a pseudonymous manner or been de-identified. If consumers are profiled in a way that affects their access to jobs, housing, or insurance, they would have the right to question the data and the automated decision-making process used to make the resulting decisions, and have the profiling model rerun with corrected data. They would be entitled to a plain English explanation of why the decision was made the way it was and what they could do to achieve a different result. So it basically extends the rights that we all have right now related to our credit scores under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to other kinds of important life decisions. So the House and Senate versions of the bill are aligned and have passed all of their required committees as standalone bills. So funding for enforcement has been being provided to the Minnesota Attorney General's office in the supplementary budget agreement, which is agreed by all. So Minnesota, and actually all of the states that have passed these bills so far, they rely on the enforcement by the state attorney generals. So you may have noticed that there is a draft federal bill circulating called the American Privacy Rights Act. And I'm already working with Senator Klobuchar's staff. There is a federal, a congressional working group working to tune up that bill before it's introduced, and so I'm already providing feedback to through Senator Klobuchar's office to inform that effort as well. And Senator Westland, would you like to say anything?
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to work with Representative Elkins, who, as has been mentioned, has spent years of his life on this. He has significant subject matter expertise, and it was an honor and a privilege for him to ask me to author this bill actually last year. For years, Minnesotans have been asking for more protections around the use and sale of online data. This legislative session, we are finally putting control back in the hands of Minnesotans. Currently, tech companies can collect and sell data such as names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, payment information, social security numbers, and so much more. When Minnesotans engage with tech platforms, they deserve to know what data is being collected, where it is being stored, whether it is secure, and whether their data is being sold. The Minnesota Consumer Data Privacy Act gives Minnesotans rights over their data, the right to access the data, to correct the data and any inaccuracies, to delete their personal data, to obtain a copy of their data, and to opt out of the sale of the data. They also have the right for to know what processing of the data is being used for targeted advertising purposes and any profiling that may have a legal or significant impact on their lives. I will say this, that the DFL continues to put Minnesotans' rights at the top of our agenda, and I'm proud of this legislation that puts the rights of Minnesotans first as our world becomes ever more digitized. And as Representative Elkins has mentioned, while it would be absolutely preferable for something to happen on the federal level so that there's consistency across the country, we have found that sometimes Congress has a little difficulty getting on the same page and passing things. And in the absence of some federal legislation to protect consumers' data, we feel that is really important here in the state of Minnesota that we do what we can to protect Minnesotans. Thank you.
Questions?
So you said, I do see those boxes that pop up and say if I'm a resident of Virginia, something should happen. Of course, I'm not a resident of Virginia, so I skip it. What if it now says, if you're a resident of Minnesota, what will then happen? What will I see? Do you have a sense of that? Is there a box to check that gives me more information? Is there ways to sign up?
Yeah, if you click through, then you will see these other rights in the privacy statement. I did actually do one. I'm a member of Marriott Bonvoy, and so I was updating my consumer profile on their website, and they came across one of those and checked the box and then went to fill it out, and at the end it said, no, we know you live in Minnesota, you don't these rights aren't for you. So
how would the opt-in work? Or would it be on specific browsers like Firefox or social media sites, or would it be through the process?
And for the things that you have to opt in for, yeah, so well, opt out is most of all data is at least opt out, and you can go in. I could show you after we're done how to do it in Firefox. There are settings that you can make under the privacy and security group of settings in the browser that you just check a couple of boxes.
Are companies required to prompt that opt-out, or can they just hide it in some kind of back-end settings in their servers?
Yeah, for the opt-out stuff, they have to post their privacy statement in a prominent place. Most companies put it at the bottom of their homepage. And you just click on it and it takes you to that area. But the more important for the sensitive stuff, and I suspect that over time the definition of sensitive data will be expanded, but for those things the default is no, they cannot share your data or use it for targeted advertising unless they solicit your explicit approval.
You may mention this, but what again is the definition under this bill of sensitive?
The main categories of data that are deemed sensitive is anything biometric related and precise location. So most of the definitions across these bills are consistent. The only one I tinkered with, because I think the kind of standard definition, which is plus or minus a third of a mile, isn't actually either actionable or enforceable, because it doesn't correspond to any degree of accuracy with any system of geographic coordinates. So on your phone or your car, your location is collected in terms of decimal degrees of latitude and longitude. And then the way I've defined it is anything more than 3 degrees of decimal accuracy of decimal latitude and longitude is sensitive. So 3 decimal points is about the length of a football field. 4 decimal points is about 10 feet. It's accurate enough to identify your home. And once you've identified that this device belongs to this home, it unlocks all kinds of public information that's associated with the address. So that's a very important definition, and I'm trying to get my version of it. It was heavily negotiated. I've got literally 125 stakeholders in my notification list. Every time there's a significant announcement related to the bill, it goes out to 125 different stakeholders, and they've all weighed in on this stuff. And so provisions like that have been, heavily, heavily vetted by the user community.
Does this have support from some of those big trade organizations that have been testifying against some other bills like TechNet and Chamber of Progress and stuff?
Yes, because I've been working on this for 5 years, but I did get to a point where all of the big, the trade groups, most of the lobbying on this has been coming through a couple of umbrella organizations focused on technology like TechNet and the Coalition of State Privacy Coalition. That one. So there's a lobbyist for that coalition named Andy Kingman, who has actually been a very good partner to work with. He would be a good person to talk to, and I can get you his contact information. But he has been kind of the funnel for all comments coming from the very broad business community. And I've had a very productive working relationship with Andy, and he's gotten me to the point where all of the business organizations are at least neutral. There really is no opposition. I think Senator Westland would also tell you that the bill kind of sailed through its committees in both chambers with very little discussion on voice votes. I was really kind of hoping I'd be able to move this as a standalone bill, because it would have passed both chambers probably almost unanimously. So all of the Minnesota-based business organizations, the chamber, the business partnership, are pretty much neutral. They know that this is coming, and they feel that this is a well-crafted bill.
Assuming this passes, does there need to be some sort of education campaign to let Minnesotans know that if this is something you're interested in, you do need to take these steps to
That's
ensure?
why you're here. But yes, no, I also work very closely with the State Attorney General's office. They'll be adding, I think, 3 to 4 attorneys. And I know that this is something that they feel strongly about as well. And I know they intend to, enforce this seriously. Plus, given that the vast majority of these laws are a consistent structure. There's like 15 states have enacted it. I think this year we've also got Nebraska and Maryland have already passed it. And it's about equally split between red states and blue states. But we're all using the same basic framework that was originally developed by a Washington state senator, now retired, named Reuben Carlisle. Ironically, the bill has never passed in Washington because they got hung up about private right of action. So none of the bills that have passed so far include a private right of action. They all involve attorney general enforcement, but the attorney generals are all talking to each other. So I facilitated introductions to their counterparts in Colorado and Connecticut and Oregon. Colorado and Connecticut were 2 of the first states to pass these bills. And most of the bills that have passed last year or this year are kind of hewed pretty closely to the Connecticut version because it was especially well vetted.
You mentioned the Attorney General's office and their role in this. What does compliance with this look like in those 15 other states?
So basically, these are violations are prosecuted as unfair trade practices.
Sure. I guess more generally, like, have we seen violations of this in other states, and is there action being taken by other attorney generals?
So in the earliest states like Colorado and Connecticut, there is kind of a cure period where companies have the ability to fix their mistakes without being fined. In most states, the cure period will expire. I can see from activity, especially in Colorado and Connecticut, that the AG's offices in both of those states are saying that they're seeing a fair amount of requirements for cure, but they're finding that companies, once notified that they're out of compliance, are bringing themselves into compliance pretty quickly.
There were a few other bills that dealt with sort of data protection, specifically around children.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any involvement in those bills. I don't know if they're going anywhere, but this one seems to. I mean, what's the difference here? Why did maybe some of those, like the
So
kid codes?
the Kids Code Act, Representative Bonner's bill, she's also worked very hard on that over the last several years as well. At this point, I think she has the best bill framework in that area in the country. That bill did pass in Maryland. We know that the Maryland bill that passed was significantly influenced by the work that Representative Bonner did on that issue, and I've done on this one. We're going to try and see if we could attach her bill to my bill, but it doesn't look like that we've got a couple of roadblocks on the Senate side on that one. So we're still working to see if we can find a path to get her bill passed this year as well. That may spill over into next year, but that one is also very important.
I think also just to add to that with regards to consumer data privacy, this has been such a delicate negotiation, and Representative Elkins has probably spent hundreds of hours over the last number of years on this, that I think it was important because we have nailed this down. We do have either stakeholder support or neutrality on it, that would be sort of introducing some conflict about getting this passed, and I think it's just really important we get this provision passed.
Is the enforcement mostly complaint-based?
It will be probably, like most things that are AG-based, it's complaint, people complain. I have a couple of things that I may ask them to look into, would be a good example. So as I've gone through this journey the last 5 years, I like to joke that I find something new and horrifying about every 2 or 3 weeks. So I used digital campaign advertising on my campaign for the first time on my last election. But before I signed up, I asked the vendor how the ads are targeted. And I've asked that same question to most of my colleagues, and most legislators believe that it's mostly just based on zip code or something. No. So what I was told is that we all have our campaign databases, and we can target the voters we want to reach as individuals. So he said, you just send us a list of the voters you want to reach with their addresses. We have a partner vendor that has mapped just about every device in the country to the location where it spends the night. And I suspect that the data mostly comes from things like weather applications. So if you have a free weather application, the old joke is that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Okay, if you're not paying for your weather app, the data that you're sending through the weather app is it. So if the weather app knows that first thing you do in the morning when you get out of bed is you check the weather, they're collecting data that says this is where this device spends the night. So they have basically their vendors have created a map of where every device in the country spends the night. So our ads get sent to all of the devices that live at the voter's address. So it's very well targeted, but you have to wonder, how is all of this assembled? So I'll give you one more horror story. So some researchers at Oracle wanted to check Google's claims that they're not regularly collecting data about us. The phone in your pocket has about 24 different sensors in it, and it records your geolocation to 7 digits of latitude and longitude, which is that would be about this diameter. So one of the researchers went to a phone store and bought about a half dozen Android phones, threw them in her backpack and took them with her on a vacation trip from Connecticut up to Maine and back. And she included in the backpack a device that just passively records the traffic going back to and from the phones. And what they found is that Google was taking a complete snapshot of all the data from all 24 sensors once a second, recording your latitude and longitude to 7 digits of digital accuracy, plus things like your IP address, your speed, your direction, so they could tell what lane she was traveling down on the highway. If she stopped at the Caribou in Bangor, the thing was accurate enough that she could say, okay, she logged in from the Caribou's IP address, and you could even tell what seat she was sitting in the Caribou. Yeah, there's some pretty scary stuff out there.
Okay, it's bad, but we get cat videos.
Yeah. But you probably don't want anybody to know that you're watching cat videos.
Bill, that's up today, and it's been passed through Senate committees, and does that mean it goes into negotiation and conference, or?
Yeah, so that it's in a bill that I think we're sending. This is a House file, I think, isn't it? I think it's a House file, so it will go over to the Senate and the Commerce Committee.
Yeah, it's in the Commerce Committee.
Yeah, yeah.
Commerce and what else?
What's that, what else is in that omnibus? What they put in
agriculture, so I don't know, who knows?
Energy and agriculture.
Energy and
Commerce,
agriculture.
energy, and agriculture. All
Yeah.
right.
So those will all be in the same conference committee, and both sides have it in, okay.
Okay.
Anything
Yeah.
else?
How are you
Right.
feeling about the last 2 weeks of session? Is it all gonna get done?
Tired.
Tired?
We were here until midnight last night, and we expect to be here until midnight, probably for the next 2 weeks.
You could start earlier.
We could, and we could come in on Saturdays, but those decisions are made way above my pay grade. And I want to thank, Senator Westland. I've been working on this for 5 years. It's by far the single most complicated legislative project I have ever taken on. And so, for her to step in cold and, have to gain at least a reasonable level of mastery over this subject and shepherd it through the Senate this year has been nothing short of amazing. So I am deeply grateful to you for taking this on. I mean, I don't know if I would have taken it on 5 years ago if I'd known what I was getting myself into, but I spent 25 years managing data as an IT data architect. So when consultant came shopping the first version of the Washington Privacy Act to me, I said, well, I don't know if this bill is worth passing, but I would agree I'm probably the best person in the legislature to take this on. So.
And I'm a family law attorney, so all technical questions get directed to Representative Elkins.
Yeah, I also need to thank Nathan Hopkins, who was my drafter in House research, because he's been with me all the way through this as well. He does all the work on data practices stuff. He's also got Representative Bonner's bill. And with all of the numerous changes, I think this bill ended up having like 4 or 5 engrossments with all of incorporating all of the feedback. And he's been with me all the way through this as well, and has just done an amazing job also.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks guys.